Welcome back to my channel. My name is Shay. I'm an aspiring novelist working on my hopefully debut book called Project Legendary, which is just going to be a YA contemporary Greek mythology reimagining with a twist. And today is all about a writing challenge. I'm doing another writing challenge. Today's focused on characters and getting to know your characters. This one, though, was a little bit different from the last one. I did get the inspiration from different Authortubers, but I haven't seen somebody actually do this variation of it, but I am so sure I'm not the first to think about this. So come on along with me for the ride of going through this. First things first, I am doing a Harry Potter sorting activity. So I'm going to take my 4 main characters and the 612 Olympians that most people are familiar with, and I'm going to put them in a wheel. I'm going to spin the wheel, and I'm going to, based off of who pops up, I'm going to put them in the Hogwarts houses that I believe that they would go in for how they are in my story. Some things might be different than what you're expecting because of my interpretation of these characters in the setting that I have them in. So I'm really excited to do this character deep dive. Like I said, I have seen other character challenges where you do the personality test for them or doing the Hogwarts test for them, but I've mostly seen that done with books that have only a small set of characters, like 1, 2, maybe 3 characters, versus everybody's kind of important in this world because it's the retelling of multiple stories at the same time, not just our main cast, not just the 4 biggest main characters. And there'd be a lot of tests to take. So I didn't want to take 12 billion tests. So I decided I would do this, and we could talk through what each character would fall into, and then I would type up a writing description of what it would be like if they were walking up and the sorting hat was being placed on their head. So that's my challenge. So now, let's get straight to it. Why waste any time?
All right, so what you're looking at right now is my little Word doc that I created to sort the characters into where I believe they belong in the end. I'm just going to put their names underneath their house. And underneath that space is where I will eventually type the scenes. That being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the descriptions of each house. So these are the 2 images that I'm going to use to determine where people go, as well as my own headcanons about these houses based off of what I remember from reading and watching this series. The first one is Gryffindor, and the quote is saying all about how they're brave and chivalrous and daring and their nerve. Then there is Slytherin, which is where it says where you'll find your real friends and their cunningness, and they're willing to do what it takes to achieve their goals. Then there's Hufflepuff, that are just and loyal and patient, and those are some key things for Hufflepuff. And last but not least, Ravenclaw, wit and learning will find their kind. Here's the second image that I was talking to you about of the different ways you can sort them. So it can be driven by reason, people driven by their passion, whether or not they're externally or internally motivated and validated. So just some other things to consider other than just the brave, resourceful, ambitious, loyal, the main ones that we typically see. Another way to think about those traditional characteristics. I really like the way they separated them out. Though, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our very first name and start sorting people. Let's go to the wheel. Notice I have all of their names, the 12 Olympians, plus my 4 main characters. So let's spin and see what we get. Round and round we go. Where it lands, nobody knows. And Hades. Okay. So I feel like Hades should be a no-brainer. But I still want to go through the process because you never know, you might be surprised, especially like I said, since these are my interpretations of these characters. And if we look at external or internally validated, he definitely is more internally validated. If he was externally validated, he would still be seeking his father's approval like his other two brothers. But he's not. I'm been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, I'm over it. I'm gonna do what I wanna do. He is definitely driven by passion for his big decision making skills. However, I feel like he is driven by reason on his day to day skills. Like, I feel like he's not just wearing his heart on his sleeves every single day. And there is a relationship that he was in that I feel like he might have been doing that. And he's now like, yeah, I don't want that anymore, though. That's definitely reason based. And proactive versus reactive, he is definitely proactive. He, even in the original mythology, he went after and got what he wanted with Persephone. Like, he didn't just wait around for the gods to bestow him a wife that he wanted. He went and chose the wife that he wanted. So definitely a proactive. And then when we think about ethics and morality, he does follow the rules. Even as the guardian of the underworld in original mythology, yes, he will sometimes make exceptions if you make it worth his while, but you still need to play by the rules of the underworld. That's kind of how he got his wife, right? So I think when you take all that into consideration, it really puts him between Slytherin and Ravenclaw. So let's take it to the second graphic, the other graphic. While he is for sure an intelligent man, I don't think learning is something he really like cares about in that kind of way. But if we look at Slytherin's first line where you'll find your real friends, he has a very close, tight knit of friends, and Slytherin bonds are tight. They will do anything for one another if it's their bond to be friends. If you're just a lackey, okay, no. But if you're a legitimate friend, they hold strong bonds. So I think he fits more into Slytherin, which ironically is where most people probably thought he was going anti-ways. And our next wheel lands on Clio, one of our main POVs, the muse of history. So let's take a look at what she could possibly be. I'm definitely not thinking Gryffindor. I don't feel like she's that daring. I don't feel like she's that, oh, I'm gonna fight the man type personality, type of passion. I definitely believe she is guided by reason more than passion, especially in these later versions of herself and where she starts off the story. And then if we take a look at these other things, I feel like she is more Hufflepuff just because of the reactive portion rather than proactive, even though it's due to a curse. She can't be proactive. All she can do is react to what's around her. So, with that being said, her only options right now are really Slytherin and Hufflepuff, though she is a very intelligent person, loves to read and whatnot, which makes her very Ravenclaw coded. But I believe the things that we're looking at here just don't prove that point. I feel like she either has to be Slytherin or she has to be Hufflepuff due to not being a very passionate person when we first meet her. And honestly, throughout this whole first book, she's not really going to start to change and develop until book 2 and 3. Also, when it comes to individually oriented or socially oriented, I do believe she's more individually oriented, but she does like the few people she has decided to be close to. And when it comes to validation, she is very intrinsically validated, mostly because her outside world is constantly changing around her. So she can't be validated by something constantly changing. So I think we are going to have to go with Hufflepuff, but maybe with a Ravenclaw aesthetic. Kind of like how Hermione was a Gryffindor, and everybody's like, why wouldn't she be placed in Ravenclaw? She's super, super smart. But there was bigger qualities about Hermione than just her intelligence, and that's why she was placed in Gryffindor instead of Ravenclaw. And I believe a similar thing to happen here. So we're gonna go ahead and put Clio in Hufflepuff and just put in parentheses, Ravenclaw aesthetic, so that we get a more complete picture, especially when we go to write, or when I say we, when I go to write the scene down below. It's a nice little nugget for me to think about including in the scene. All right, spin, spin, where it goes, nobody knows. And we're gonna land on Demeter. Okay. So this might be a little bit tricky because Demeter's not fully fleshed out yet in this rendition of her. She's very much still a side character in this first book, very much supporting role to Hera and Persephone at the moment, and even a little bit Poseidon. They kind of have like a whole little subplot going on, but it's very light. This is going to take a little bit more thoughts. If we look at reactive versus proactive, I definitely think she's reactive, or at least that's where most of her emotions come into play when she's reactive. Most of the stories I feel like I've heard of Demeter, she's reacting very big reactions to things that happened to her. Sure, yes, she tried to protect Persephone by being like overly guarded, but her most devastating decisions were made out of reaction and out of her passion. So if we look over here, I think it's kind of weird, but I think we kind of have to go Gryffindor. She was unafraid to stand up and be like, Zeus, you better do something about your brother, or else everybody on Earth gonna die. So she definitely has no problem standing up to authority when it's something she truly, truly believes in and is truly, truly passionate about. She wasn't trying to outwit Hades or anything like that. She wasn't trying to be cunning. And while I feel like maybe Demeter could be a little patient, I feel like that's not really her forte, not her biggest strength. So we're gonna actually put her in Gryffindor with some puff aesthetic because she's got real big loyalty, very hard worker. So she's got some puff aesthetics to her that I think would make most people want to put her in Hufflepuff. But I think if you really look at her core, she's Gryffindor. The next is Dionysus. I love me some Dionysus. He's one of my favorite personally, not just in the story, but in general. I think we have to automatically X-nay some of them, like Hufflepuff. He's not a Hufflepuff. There's nothing patient and just chill about Dionysus at all. So we have to look through Gryffindor, Slytherin, and Ravenclaw. And while Dionysus is no dummy by any means, I don't think he'd be Ravenclaw. So let's take a look at the other one. If we go by passion or reason, of course not reason. There's not a reasonable bone in his body. Great guy, but there's not a logical bone in that man's body. Now, depending on which Greek myth story, origin story you like to believe in, that's not entirely his fault. But it still stands to reason. Passion. Also, external validation, big time. He definitely likes his external validation. Even though he's going to do what he wants regardless, he likes the social aspect of it, I think. I also think when we think of proactive versus reactive, it's kind of hard because I feel like he's both. I kind of feel like he's both, but probably more proactive just because he's already doing what he wants to do anyways. It's really looking really Ravenclaw or Gryffindor, but I just don't feel like I feel like if he was in Ravenclaw, he'd be like a Luna Ravenclaw. But even at that, I feel like he doesn't really outwit or outsmart anybody. I feel like he just follows his gut, and where his gut takes him is where he lands. And I feel like that's definitely more Gryffindor than Ravenclaw. But he does have the Ravenclaw creativity, so maybe we'll give him Gryffindor, but with the creativity of the Ravenclaw. I think if we look back at this graphic, it even more points towards Gryffindor, simply because he is smart, but he's like that smart kid that's smart without even trying, that'll sleep through the entire lecture and then ace the test. So he's not seeking out knowledge or learning or anything like that. So I think that firmly lands him in Gryffindor. Plus, Gryffindor seems to be where the wild shenanigan people go to play. The Weasley twins, the Marauders. That's if you like just a little bit of mischief in your day, it seems like Gryffindor is where you go to play. And Dionysus and his group, his little mini clique of Hermes and Apollo, definitely are here to play. So let's go ahead and add Dionysus to the Gryffindor side of things. And we'll just give him a little bit of Ravenclaw creativity, because that's the only other house he was even considered for, even though very, very lightly. And we are back to spinning. This is actually turning out a lot longer than I thought, so this might turn into a 2-part challenge. Ooh, Athena! Okay. If you are watching this in 2026, I wonder if you're going to go see the Odyssey where Zendaya is playing Athena. All right, so let's get down to business. Reason or passion? I have to go reason, because even her passion is fueled by her reason. She is passionate about her reason. All right, so that definitely puts us in Slytherin Hufflepuff territory. Definitely individually orientated versus socially orientated. She doesn't care if she goes against the grain. And then for sure proactive, the goddess of strategy, is not a reactive woman. She for sure is going to be over here. So I think we have firmly solidified that she's definitely not a Hufflepuff and not a Gryffindor. So it's really between Slytherin and Ravenclaw. Honestly, what's ringing in my head right now more than anything, the willing to do what it takes, because I feel like Athena's that girl that's willing to do what it takes. I feel like there's a very thin line between her and Ares, and it kind of just depends on the day if she's willing to go as far as him, or sometimes even further. Because while Athena has this very pristine type of image, when you think about certain stories like the one with Medusa, you would think passion blinded her. Because why in the world would she do that to her own priestess when a dude she don't even like was the whole problem? Very much potentially Slytherin in her ends justifies the means type mentality with some things. And I think this is another case of like the Hermione situation, where she's more than just her intelligence. And I think Athena can be cunning. She's usually not. She's usually more straightforward, I feel like, in the stories I heard her, but I feel like it's not out of her realm. And I feel like she's got loyalty there, but which is where the real friends come in. So I think I'm gonna put her in Slytherin. I think I am. I feel like it's really torn between the two, but we're gonna do a Slytherin with Ravenclaw intelligence aesthetic, just because a few more of those things leaned towards Slytherin than Ravenclaw. Namely, the fact that she is her ambition and her resourcefulness and her reasoning. So let's go ahead and spin again and see what happens this time. And we're gonna do Hermes. Okay, another gremlin. I love it. Hermes is such a fun character, and I feel like he's got to be either Slytherin or Gryffindor. But then also there's that Ravenclaw aspect because he's also a god of inventions. So he's definitely smart and outsmarted other deities as an infant. So it's not like Hermes is not also super duper smart. But let's look at the chart. Passion or reason? For sure, passion. All day, every day, buddy. Passion. And he makes his reasoning match his passion. He's the opposite of Athena that's passionate about her reasoning. He makes it sure the reason, he'll consort his reason to make sure it fits his passion. And very much socially stimulated, socially orientated, socially stimulated, socially validated. He didn't, despite stealing from Apollo on several occasions in the Greek myth, he still loves Apollo. He still loves to hang with Apollo. You know, they are still kind of ish close as those Olympians can truly be with their tempers and their temperaments. But definitely wants to be in the know, is all about, he's a god of travelers, so he's always talking to people and trying to help people or not help people if you tick him off enough. But like I'm reading Cersei right now and he's talking to Cersei and I'm just like, and the information he gives her like is helpful but like not really. Everything he does is in that case. So while he can definitely be a Slytherin, being the god of mischief as well and thieves, I don't know, it feels like maybe there's the thieves code type stuff going on sometimes. And so I feel like he's got like the outer coat of a Slytherin, because when you look at Hermes, you're like, oh my god, you are definitely a bad boy that belongs in Slytherin. But when you get to know him just a little bit deeper and a little bit more of his stories, you see that he definitely belongs in Gryffindor. But we're just gonna put the snake coat on him because also, once again, mischief managed, guys. Him and Dionysus being in Gryffindor house together, all they need is Apollo. I don't know where Apollo's going to land on this list, but if Apollo winds up being Gryffindor, they are basically the Marauders 2.0. They need a fourth person, but I mean, technically that'd be a traitor, so maybe they don't need a fourth person. And Athena's probably thanking the gods right now that she is not in Gryffindor house with them. So let's go ahead and spin the wheel again. Let's see who we get. I don't know how many more people we're going to do, but let's try and knock down a little bit more of this list. Poseidon. Poseidon. I feel like it's going to be really obvious where he goes. If we're talking about being brave and being daring, and he is not always the most chivalrous, of course, but wit and learning, that's not really his thing. Like, I'm not going to say he's dumb, but that is a point of contention between him and Athena, is that Athena's like, I'm so much smarter than you, bro. And then he's not really cunning. He's very, very straightforward. He is, if you have heard the epic, the musical track, Ruthless, that is him. He's just going to go for what he wants. He is definitely driven by passion rather than reason, I feel like, for most things. And I feel like he is definitely externally validated because he is still trying to chase his father's wishes and acceptance. And that is where the tension between him and Zeus comes along, is trying to live up to those expectations. So I think I have to put him in Gryffindor as well, because he's definitely not a puff, like in no way, shape, or form does it feel like he could be a puff. He'd be the most aggressive puff I'd ever seen in my life. But he doesn't really fall into the Ravenclaw outside of the passion, and he's very reactive. He's not trying to do anything. He just, things happen, and he said he's going to deal with it. So he's very much firmly on the Hufflepuff Gryffindor side, which means I'm going to have to do Gryffindor, which in the end I feel like is the obvious choice, but you got to go through the process sometimes because it can surprise you sometimes. For example, Athena surprised me. Or this Gryffindor house is looking crazy. Poor Demeter is like, what? How did I get here? All right, let's spin the wheel. Aw, Hestia. She's such a sweetheart. I'm gonna go through the process, but I feel like we all know where Hestia is gonna go. Just and loyal and patient. The most patient person in the entire school has to be Hestia, in her warmth and her welcoming and her hostessness. She is the goddess of the hearth and home. She is like the embodiment of a Hufflepuff, honestly. She's not gonna go out of her way to challenge any authority. She's not ambitious, like, at all. She actually gives up her position as one of the 12 Olympians to soothe down the potential fight once Dionysus is lifted up into godlyhood and wants to be potentially put on the throne. And she's like, I'll just step down. I should be on Earth anyways, chilling with the humans. It's cool. Have fun, Dionysus. That's such puff behavior. I don't know. That's so puff coded. I don't know what else is. So even looking at it, reasoning over passion, social, just in the mix. She just wants to keep the peace. She's a puff at heart, through and through. And I'm gonna put it down there. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and start writing.
And we're back! So just talk through sorting of everybody, and you saw me write everybody, and now I'm going to actually read to you what I put. So let's check out what I wrote.
Sorting hat scene. The ceremony had just begun as the first years piled in close to the famous sorting hat. Their minds wandered to where they'd be placed, and if they'd be happy there. Would they fit in with their peers? The first one called upon was Poseidon. He confidently walked up as if he already knew where he belonged. Perhaps the hat felt that unwavering confidence, because before he fully touched the crown of his head, he yelled out, "Gryffindor!" The roar of cheers erupted in the vast hall as he ran down, high-fiving people on the way down as he took his seat. Next was the brother, Hades. He also walked up confidently, but it wasn't with the same bravado as his brother. It was a quiet power, but no less was he self-assured. The hat was placed on his head neatly, and he asked, "Are you sure it's not just because you want to be far away from him?" I'd never known the sorting hat to tease, but with an upward, stern look from Hades, he laughed and belted out, "Slytherin!" The first girl to be called was the ever-poised Demeter. She sat resting her hands on her lap as she looked out. The hat rested on her head for a moment. "You are a loyal one, but you are more than your loyalty and nurturing coat. Gryffindor is where you'll grow." A shocked smile curled onto her lips. It might not have been where she expected, but she seemed happy nonetheless. She took a seat next to Poseidon, who gave her a big hug before she pushed him off. Next was Athena. People like her, everyone assumed where she'd go. The hat sort of felt like just a formality. However, once it was placed on her dark curls, it paused for a long moment. The both of them made faces before she rolled her stormy gray eyes. "Trust me, my girl, you'll enjoy the challenge." "Slytherin!" Their loud gasps from throughout the room. Surely it was a mistake. She was destined to be the brightest witch of our age, and for sure belonged in Ravenclaw. However, she didn't fight it. She simply stood up and went to sit at the long table beneath the green banner. She wound up taking her place across from Hades, but they did nothing but glare at one another before turning their attention to the next name called. The next name had a similar vibe. While most would assume the bookworm Clio would be sorted into Ravenclaw, now nobody was sure what to expect. She walked up with a yawn before the hat was gently placed on your head. If you want. Hufflepuff! The hat called out. Did she ask to be placed in Hufflepuff? It was rumored that the hat sometimes takes your personal wants and desires into consideration. The next two happened so fast they might as well have gone up together. To no one's surprise, when Dionysus reached the hat, he screamed out, Gryffindor! Even if you have a flair for the dramatics. Then, when Hermes walked up, once again it screamed out a house before landing on his head. Gryffindor! And stay away from Slytherin. No good can come from them rubbing off on you. With that judgment, he might have just saved everyone in our year from the next great menace. Last, but certainly not least, was dear, sweet Hestia. The hat rested on her head for a moment, but it didn't look like the others, where he was debating where to place her. He looked like he was truly relaxing and basking in the warmth of her mind. To Hufflepuff you go. The only verdict, he didn't scream at the top of his lungs. Hestia's soul was enough to mellow even the roughest of edges. So I hope you liked it. And I know I took a few liberties, but it's all in good fun, right? Because I don't think the hat really talks that much to everybody.
And we're back again. So, like I said, this turned out to be so much longer than I originally intended it to be. So this is going to be part 1, and then I'm going to do part 2. I'll probably record part 2 tomorrow. You probably won't see part 2 until next week. But that's okay. A little bit of anticipation, all right? I'm having a lot of fun with this. I love the Harry Potter universe. I love the way that they are sorted into their different houses and the different nuances there are to the different characters. So I am absolutely loving this right now. So this is just my bread and butter. I absolutely love it. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. Go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. In the comments, tell me what house you think you'd be in. Or if you're author too, or a writer too, tell me 1 or 2 of your characters and what house they would be in if they were in the Harry Potter universe based off of the traits that we talked about today. I would love to get to know your characters and your stories just as much. Have a wonderful day.